Hey guys, my name is Phil, or SO1. I'm one of the founding members of Team Storm Riders here in St. John's, Newfoundland. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about leadership in the context of an airsoft team and how that is different from leadership in a regular sports team like a hockey or football team. First off, if you look at a hockey team, for example, the team captain tends to be the best player on the team, or one of the best players even in the league. If you just look at the Pittsburgh Penguins, for example, their team captain is Sidney Crosby, who is arguably the best player in the league at this time. They also have a coach, and the coach is not a player on the team. His role and responsibility is simply to direct his players, tell them which plays to perform, etc. Airsoft teams are very different in that the captain of the team doesn't necessarily have to be the best player, but he does have to also be a coach on the team simultaneously. If we compare an airsoft team to a sports team, that's really doing it a disservice. Realistically, an airsoft team is much more like a military unit, as one would expect, where you have your officer or non-commissioned officer, like a sergeant or a lieutenant, giving orders to his group of men. There's, the corporals and the privates and so on. So in terms of an airsoft team, the most important thing to remember is that the player who is the captain of the team or the leader of the team doesn't have to be the best player on the team. In fact, he has to be the best at his job, which is leading his troops, not necessarily being the best shooter or being the best stealth guy. So let's look at the role of the airsoft team leader and discuss how we can best build a good foundation of leadership to foster a good sense of camaraderie between the leader and the members on the team. First of all, it's important to realize that being the leader of an airsoft team is a role in itself. Much like being a medic or the designated marksman, being a leader has specific functions that they need to fill throughout a day of airsoft. The first thing a leader needs to do is be aware of his players' capabilities. Which players are good at fulfilling what roles? Not all players are sneaky. Not all players are great shots at a long distance. As a leader, you want to be aware of which of your players are capable of performing their functions, so that when it comes to assigning tasks, you're assigning the right players to do the right job. That being said, it's not always going to be possible. You're going to be in a situation where you're going to need as many guns facing forward as possible, and that's fine. However, when you have the time and opportunity to think about your plan and which players you want to assign to do what, you need to be aware of which players are good at which tasks. Secondly, you want to be aware of what your players' desires are, not just their capabilities. Airsoft is something we do for fun, and you want to make sure you're assigning tasks that make sense for the players, both because they're capable of doing the task, but also because they enjoy it. It's important to realize what your players are good at and what they enjoy doing, and make sure that your players understand that when you assign a task with that in mind. That means that if they get a task that they don't particularly want to do or they think they're not very good at it, they realize that you've taken that into consideration, but you still need them to perform the task. That makes them more likely to do something that they don't particularly want to do because they understand it's mission critical for them. By taking into consideration what players are good at and what they enjoy doing, you show them respect. You show respect for their time and their capabilities. What this means is that they are more likely to respect you in turn as a leader because you show them respect as a player. This helps everyone have more fun on game day, and most importantly, as a leader, it makes sure that your orders are going to be followed, no matter if the player wants to do a task or not. They understand that you respect their desires, and they're willing to respect your leadership and perform the task you now need them to do, regardless of their own personal desires. Leadership is about making decisions. Sometimes those decisions are simple, sometimes they're more complicated, sometimes they're easy, and sometimes they're hard. As a leader, it's your role to make a decision for your players. Which flank are you going to attack? Are you going to defend here, or are you going to defend somewhere else along the line? As a leader, you need to take situational awareness into account. You need to figure out what's going on the battlefield, and then the players are relying on you to make a decision that is going to benefit the team. As a leader, your men aren't asking you to be infallible. They're asking you to make the best possible decision using the information available to you at the time. For example, if you call for your men to fall back, and as you're falling back, you realize that you've been completely encircled by the enemy, and they wipe out your squad, well, that kind of thing happens. And no player on your team is going to fault you for making that decision if you've built a good environment of respect between you and your players. It's important to realize that on the battlefield, you can do everything right and still lose. That's just the reality of combat. As a leader, you want to foster a kind of environment with your players so that if that does happen, they don't hold you accountable for that. You made the best decision you could and you lost. That happens. You're just going to get back in their next game, and hopefully the leadership that you've built with them is going to remain unfazed. They will still have the absolute trust in you, and you'll be able to continue on the battlefield. That's a best case scenario. In reality, when you lose a game, sometimes players get discouraged. If that's the case, it's your responsibility as a leader to sort of bring them back up, to let them know, hey, you know what? You did the best job you could. We still lost. We'll get them next time. Being a leader on the Airsoft team does mean giving orders to players, but it doesn't mean barking orders at players, nor does it mean insulting them, yelling at them, cursing at them. I've seen that countless times. Players who are the team captain, and so because they're the captain, they decide that it's okay to yell at players, tell them when they're not doing their job right, be insulting, simply because they've been chosen as captain or they're, a more veteran player than someone else. When you yell at players, you insult them or bark orders at them, they're even less likely to perform their duty as you've asked them to. They're not going to hold their position, they're not going to go along with the plan they think is a bad idea. In point of fact, you're just a jerk yelling at them. They don't know you, they don't like you, and they have no incentive to listen to you. By barking or yelling orders at them, you degrade the foundation of respect that a leader should have with his players, and frankly, that does nothing to promote the team. In terms of being a battlefield leader, there are several ways of being an effective leader. You can either lead from the front, you can lead the charge, make sure that your men are always behind you, pushing up forward. That's an absolutely okay way to lead your team. As well, you could be a couple of lines behind your team, getting a better overview of the entire battlefield so you can see your left flank and you can see your right flank, and you can use that information to make better tactical decisions. That's also an absolutely okay style of leadership. If you're charging across open terrain, you may want to lead the charge so your men are inspired to follow you as well. That's okay, and that works really well when you have a team of players who you don't know. They see you as a leader going, hey, he's running, I better run with him. When you have a team, for example, like the Storm Riders, who train together and who are more aware of each other's capabilities, it's acceptable for the leader to stand a bit behind the line and then guide his players from the rear. So, just to recap, as a leader, you're going to want to show respect to your players so that in turn they will respect you and the battlefield decisions that you make. Once you make a battlefield decision, you then decide how you want to lead, whether you want to lead from the front or the rear, depending on what players have to do, and then you commit to that decision, whether or not it succeeds. If you succeed or fail, you celebrate with your players, you remind them that everyone did a great job, you had a great day, and that just makes everyone happy at the end of the day, much more likely to come back, much more likely to trust your leadership in the future. I hope you found this video helpful and it's gotten you thinking about leadership in the airsoft world. If you have any questions, comments, negative, positive, doesn't matter, we'd love to hear about it. If you have some topics that you'd like to hear us discuss in future videos, please let us know in the comments as well. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for watching, guys.